Welcome to a new episode of Front Row. Today we are in conversation with Mr. Arun Miranda, founder and managing director of Trinity Steel Pvt Ltd. Welcome to the show, Arun.
Thank you for having me on this show.
So today we are going to engage in a very interesting conversation of how we grow our exports beyond its traditional export basket, and Arun is indeed a testimony on this aspect. So Arun, you have an export in a non-traditional export segment in Sri Lanka. So based on your experience, what are some of the key advantages Sri Lanka has compared to its competitors?
Yes, we do. Our product range is non-traditional in the Sri Lankan perspective. For any investor to come into a new country, we look for some key drivers, right? The most important aspects that we look, one is infrastructure, industrial infrastructure, energy security, skill availability, and geographic location and connectivity to different parts of the world. So out of these 5 key drivers, I think Sri Lanka, has got everything. Yes, there was a little bit of a gap in skill availability, but we as a company, we decided that we are going to invest on skill development. We considered skill development as part of our capital investment because we look at Sri Lanka in a long-term perspective, right? We are not here for the short term. So we invested in skill development. But as far as geographic location, I mean, you can't have anything better than Colombo port in this region, one of the largest ports with great connectivity to all the major destinations in the world. So all this is what helped us to decide quickly that Sri Lanka is a great place to set up our engineering goods manufacturing center. And that's why we decided to invest in Sri Lanka.
Thank you. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, we see a lot of disruptions happening to global supply chains. And are there any specific opportunities for Sri Lankan exporters to leverage?
Definitely, yes. I mean, the last couple of years, the whole world has seen a lot of disruptions in global supply chain because of all the geopolitical issues in China, even before the pandemic started. I mean, there were things like, China was clamping down heavily on environmentally polluting industries. So they shut down a lot of steel mills and they wanted to move away from power guzzling industries to more white goods and industries like semiconductors and iPhones and all that. So that resulted in a huge problem for global supply chain for many other materials. And then came the pandemic in the March of 2020, which really aggravated the situation. And then the geopolitical issues between China and the rest of the Western countries. So all this has created a big problem, and many of the Western countries which had invested heavily in China for the last 25-30 years have now realized that they need to move away from China. I mean, what they thought as China plus 1 2 years back, today they don't want to do anything with China. They just want to find another source for all their products. And therefore all these industries initially moved to Taiwan, then Vietnam, then Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia. India is a big beneficiary of this movement of industries and companies out of China. But I think Sri Lanka has a great opportunity right now to attract FDI from all these Western countries who want to move out of China permanently and shift their base of supply to other countries. And with all the infrastructure and the geographic location advantage of Sri Lanka, I think Sri Lanka is well positioned to attract FDI, and Sri Lanka should move in that direction.
Thank you. So what are some of the strategic learnings by facing these challenges of the pandemic that you would like to share with fellow Sri Lankan exporters so that they can also adjust to the new normal and drive their exports?
Well, I think the pandemic was definitely a bolt from the blue for all of us last year when it hit us. So yes, I mean, 18 months since we first faced the pandemic, we have learned a lot of lessons. Number one, I think the work from home strategy has taught us all lessons that we can do most of the things that we were doing remotely also. Number two is that we learned a lesson that we need to spread our supply chain. When I say supply chain, I mean our vendors. We need to have multiple sources of vendors for all our raw material and consumable supply, because there was a point in time when we had to shut down production because we had just one or two vendors for our key consumables. So we need to work on our supply chain. And number 3, liquidity. I mean, cash is king. Yes, we had to shut down our operations for 2-3 months. I mean, everybody did. So the fact that we were good on liquidity helped us, and we are proud to say that even though we didn't operate for 3 months, I mean, all our employees were paid 100% even during the lockdown, and we could do it only because of our liquidity. And most important, I think pandemic has taught us empathetic leadership, right? The most important aspect for us was to ensure that all our people are safe during the pandemic, and we are very happy that though there were a few positive cases, but we didn't lose anybody, and we were able to take care of our people, and now it's payback time. They understand how the company took. So empathetic leadership is something that was a big takeaway during the pandemic, and transparency and with our customers, brand loyalty, customer loyalty. These are some of the things that we learned during the pandemic, and it is surprising to tell you that during this pandemic year, we won the Best Exporter Award, which says a lot about how we were able to manage the pandemic. I mean, we went through 3 phases: react, respond, and renew. So when a pandemic struck, we had to react. It was surprise for everybody. Then we had to respond to the situation, and then there was the phase when we had to renew and go back to the growth trajectory. So these were some of the takeaways of this pandemic for us.
Thank you very much for that very insightful conversation with us, Arun. Indeed, the last comments you made, how do you react and how you really renew. So I think that indeed is a great message for our fellow exporters. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Stay tuned with us for similar episodes of Front Row.
Premiumbeat.com